With Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker now just around the corner with 19 days to go until its official release by Disney and Lucasfilm, a lot of fans are either very worried about this movie, very excited about it, or feeling very apathetic towards Star Wars in general. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, obviously, through many of the things that people have seen in the teasers and the trailers and aspects that they have heard about this movie, a lot of people have mixed emotions about Episode 9, especially after all of the major changes that Disney, Lucasfilm, and even Kathleen Kennedy went through in order to really reset the tone of Episode 9, to really kind of just make it cater to a general audience, which we will be going over today, about a specific character that is rather unfortunate that was actually dwindled down in The Rise of Skywalker, for, of course, the third act of Episode 9. Now, specifically, what's really intriguing about all of this is, of course, that all of the changes that were made during the months of August, September, and October, where it's explained that during many of the reshoots and rewrites of the film, during those specific months, is when many changes and adjustments were made to the second and third acts of the movie. It's explained that many of these changes were done by Disney and Kathleen Kennedy to create a different tone for the film that would better fit for the general audience that sees the film this December. It's said that one of the major sequences that were cut from the third act of the movie was a major cameo of a popular Star Wars character from the animated TV series Star Wars Rebels. That character was Ezra Bridger. It's explained that one of the cameo scenes for Ezra Bridger was going to be him on top of one of the horses, on top of one of the Star Destroyers, grouping up with the Resistance with Finn, Jannah, Poe, and more, where eventually Bridger would use a green lightsaber against a pair of Sith troopers. However, it's explained that through many of the changes to the film, that scene was ultimately cut, and Ezra's treatment in the film has drastically changed and dwindled down to where he will no longer appear on top of the Star Destroyer, leading the Resistance and using a saber, to where now it's explained that he will be inserted into the film as a Force Ghost voice that reaches out to Rey, where she is receiving a power from the netherworld of the Force. It's explained that now Ezra's voice will play along with Ahsoka's, Luke's, Anakin's, Kenobi's, Yoda's, and even Leia's, where they all provide her power from the netherworld of the Force. This is a change that would essentially suggest that both Ezra Bridger and Ahsoka Tano died some years ago and are now one with the Force, and that Disney also made this change to provide a greater purpose for Ezra Bridger. However, unfortunately, he will not be seen in the movie. Originally, his role was portrayed by an unknown actor in his 50s with long black hair and a goatee, wearing some kind of green and black armor on his chest, riding one of those horses and eventually using a green saber, fighting the Sith troopers on board of that Star Destroyer over Exegol. It said that Ezra's arrival was supposed to tie directly into how he knows the areas of the unknown regions, since he was lost here years ago, jumping the hyperspace with Grand Admiral Thrawn. This was also excluded by Disney since many fans may not have known exactly who he really was and wouldn't recognize him. However, the Force Ghost voice of Ezra is said to sound familiar to how he does in Star Wars Rebels, and will use a specific line of dialogue to Rey that matches a line of dialogue that he uses and provides in Star Wars Rebels. So let's go over a couple of parts about this. Now, the thing about Episode 9 here is that obviously we have seen that they have gone through many different changes and adjustments to this film, either for better or for worse. And in this scenario, I think it's for the worse. Because let me just explain this here. I want to go over Ezra Bridger, by far one of the fan favorite characters out there for many hardcore Star Wars fans. I know that some people like Rebels, some people completely despise Rebels. You know, not everybody's into the animated TV series, and I totally get that. I myself, however, I am really into the animated TV series. I love everything about the Clone Wars. I love everything about Star Wars Rebels. I love the Clone Wars Season 7 coming up in 2020 and how that's going to be on Disney Plus. That's actually going to be quite an interesting show because it's going to tie directly into The Rise of Skywalker as well. But this particular scenario, something just seems rather off and just not right. And let me tap into that right now. So the thing about this is how through all those adjustments and the reshoots that they did through those specific months is that they dwindled Ezra's role down from actually being on top of a Star Destroyer and fighting against the Sith troopers using a green lightsaber, riding one of those horses, all the way down to the point where he's now just going to be a Force Ghost voice, playing alongside Anakin, Leia, Luke, Kenobi, and Yoda. And my problem with that is, as well as Ahsoka, my problem with that is is that where's Qui Gon Jinn? Where's Mace Windu? Where's other characters like Kanan Jarrus or something like that? It just doesn't really seem like it's well thought out. You would think that instead of both Ezra Bridger and Ahsoka Tano, you would at least, at the very minimum, throw in Qui Gon Jinn as a Force Ghost voice reaching out to Rey. I can't understand that, because if you think about it this way, Qui Gon Jinn really was the big piece of the puzzle of Anakin Skywalker coming into this world and becoming exactly who he really is, as Darth Vader, and eventually redeeming himself. You know, if you think about all the different turn of events, if it weren't for Qui Gon Jinn, you know, finding Anakin over on Tatooine and kind of pulling him into the Jedi Council and deciding to train him through the ways of the Jedi, if it weren't for Qui Gon Jinn, things may have actually not happened the way that they actually did. So I'm kind of quite surprised that instead of Qui Gon Jinn and others like Mace, if he is, you know, going to be a part of this, obviously there are talks by Disney and Lucasfilm that Mace Windu is going to be alive and well sometime after Order 66, and they have plans for a live-action TV series. That I can understand exactly why there would be no Mace Windu Force Ghost voice. That could be the reason. That's understandable, because there are actual talks of him being, you know, alive and well after Order 66. However, that's not to say that he did not die, or is alive at some point in time before the events of The Force Awakens. I would like to believe that he passed on at some point in time well before the events of The Force Awakens. Obviously, he must have, right? Just because of old age. So, with that being said, they should have at least had Qui-Gon Jinn inserted in there. I don't know if this had to do with the thing that Liam Neeson said. I won't go over that in this video, but he did say something that was very controversial about his past, and a lot of people got very mixed about what he said about what he actually wanted to do. Some years ago, many years ago, he talked about this and admitted to it. I don't know if Disney doesn't want to be affiliated with him right now, but also it still doesn't make sense to me, because there's also talks of him reprising his role in the upcoming Kenobi TV series as a Force Ghost. So this may just be, simple fan service at the end of the day, and they couldn't fit anybody else in there because they didn't want it to be too scrambled. You know, having Ezra Bridger and Ahsoka Tano as Force Ghost voices, instead of having them as, you know, in the form of an appearance, I think is a big missed opportunity once more, and yet another missed opportunity for Anakin Skywalker even within the third act of Episode 9. I don't know if you guys knew this, but at the very end of Episode 9, there is going to be a line of dialogue, a rather detailed line of dialogue, where Anakin tries to wake Rey up when she's actually going up against Palpatine, and he is said to be the first one that reaches out to Rey before the other Force Ghosts of the past tune in. So that's my only problem with this, is that it dwindled down from an appearance to just an actual voice reaching out to Rey. Now, though a lot of you guys out there may like that idea, that's perfectly fine. We all have our own opinions. That's perfectly fine. But in my, own opinion here, I think it's just a big mistake and a missed opportunity of how they actually shot that scene of Ezra Bridger in the form of a cameo. And I will admit, there's a part of that cameo that really sounded quite ridiculous, of how he's on top of a horse, using a lightsaber against, eventually against the Sith troopers. In a way, I guess it was a good call to kind of just cancel that scene out, because it wasn't quite as I was expecting it to be. But at the same exact time, him using a green lightsaber against Sith troopers, who wouldn't at least like that in the slightest, right? The only thing that I think was a little off-putting about that was how he was riding a horse, a space horse, like, Poe, Finn, and Jannah are, on top of that Star Destroyer, where BB-8, I don't know if you guys saw the trailer, but if you look very closely, BB-8 is literally leading the Resistance now instead of Ezra Bridger. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. Originally it was supposed to be Ezra, now it's BB-8, a droid, leading the Resistance. If you guys look at the final trailer very carefully, where you see the ships leaving over the world of Exegol, look very carefully at the bottom right corner of the screen. So anyways guys, drop a comment below, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.